Hello, this is Satia Freeman, and I will be presenting my classroom equity project entitled Learning is Better with Cream on Top. And this project is actually geared toward educators. So it is set up in the form of a workshop, professional development, so that educators, teachers, anyone that is a stakeholder with students can come in and learn and just develop their instructional toolbox to ensure that all students are able to be successful. So let's get right into it. This first slide explains what the cream on top of what we're doing in our classroom is. So it is culturally responsive, equitable, accessible, and meaningful. So again, there is no barrier that should be in the way of every child achieving their maximum success. So whether it be language or economic issues or racial or cultural, if we believe that all children have the right to a quality education and are able to succeed, then it is our duty as educators to ensure that we play our part and make sure that we are providing instruction that has cream so that all students again can learn. I would include students and parents in this just so that they can have their voice heard. So parents and students would be able to participate in an anonymous survey where they are just simply asked questions about their voices being heard in the classroom. So parents would answer questions about how they feel they are welcome into the building, or how they perceive their students to be welcome, their children to be welcomed into the building. Students would answer questions about whether inside of their classrooms they feel as if they are at a disadvantage when it's time to participate in certain activities. General questions that give them the opportunity to give feedback on the teaching styles that they often interact with. For example, are they often asked to listen to lectures rather than to do hands-on activities? And this is really a good piece because teachers get a chance to hear from their audience. A lot of times we don't know exactly what our parents and teachers and students are thinking because we don't always give them an opportunity to give feedback. Next, teachers would participate in this Kahoot, and it only has 3 questions, and it very simply is just a feeler. What all do you know, and what are your understandings or even misconceptions about culturally responsive teaching or culturally responsive pedagogy? And if you would like, if you have a Kahoot account or if you just create one, you will have access to that particular game. It's interactive. So again, we want this to be a fun and engaging time. So at this point, teachers will pull out their devices, their iPads, laptops, phones, and participate in this interactive game. So we're starting with culturally responsive. So after we had some discussion about what we think culturally responsive pedagogy is, now we're getting into the section where we provide information. So I really like this title. If a curriculum does not respond to a culture, then the culture won't respond to the curriculum. So we can have all of the awesome instruction that we want, all of the activities that we want, but if we do not cater it to meet the needs and the interests of those who we are serving, then the students won't respond in the way that we would like them to, and they won't achieve the way that we would desire them to as well. And so looking at this particular slide, we talk about what culture looks like on the outside, which is the tip of the iceberg. But in order for us as educators to really get to what our children need to be successful, we have to go underneath into the shallow culture and the deep culture and use that to influence our instruction. This slide focuses on just how awareness and partnerships and information processing and community of learners and learning environment, how all of those things play a role in culturally responsive teaching. So this is not an opportunity for us to include music because we think that a certain group of people just like music. But there are some real research-based practices and things that have been accepted in the educational community to make sure that students get what they need. So the first couple of slides are on culturally responsive education. Now we're moving on to the E in CREAM, which is equitable. So here is a picture. It might be something that you've seen already before, but it simply gives the illustration of how equality says that everybody gets the same thing. Equity says that people get what they need. And this is a time when teachers could turn and talk to each other just to share their thoughts or maybe share some experiences. So we will pause here and do a think, pair, share, sharing out what would actually happen if this were related to education. So our goal is not necessarily to give all children the same thing. That just keeps the inequities that are already there in place. But if one child needs more or additional support, that is what we do so that they all, again, can achieve their maximum potential. This next slide focuses on Cummins' model of academic language. So we've already looked at culturally responsive, equitable, and now we're getting into the accessible part of it. So equitable and accessible. So Cummins' model of academic language is actually taken from his view on second language acquisition. So students who are learning English as a second language, the idea is not to make the work easier for them. We want to keep it in the higher quadrants of cognitively demanding, but we want to embed the supports, embed the context so that a language barrier won't be a barrier for learning. So if we have children who are learning English as a second language, then we need to make sure that our lessons are focused in the B section, where we include demonstrations and audio-visual experiments, hands-on activities, projects, meaningful things that help students, regardless of their background, be successful. So we've been sitting for a while and talking at this point along in our workshop. So now it is time to do some exploration. Teachers now have an opportunity to get up out of their seats and walk around, and we're going to explore and talk about how technology plays a role in the way we can make learning more accessible for our students. So whether it be a language barrier or cultural barrier, there's something about technology that all students can rally behind, and regardless of what their background is, they all love technology. They all love the bright colors and the way that the screen moves when they touch it. So if we can really maximize our use of effective technology use, then learning will be more accessible. So at this point, teachers would be able to click on each of the pictures. As you see, it says click on each picture for a teacher tutorial. So if there is a particular app that maybe you have not heard of or you've never seen in action before, you get an opportunity to click on these active links and actually see a short tutorial. All of the tutorials are less than 5 minutes. So if there's something that catches your eye, you will have a little bit of a takeaway before you even leave the room about how it works. Teachers, again, at this point are moving around, and so these QR codes are posted around the room, and people are using their devices to actually scan the QR code, and they get a chance to see a student using this. So it might be a link to a video, or it might be a link to a tool, for example, that is already being used in the classroom. Some of these are actual activities that I have used with my children. A lot of times we get for example, we get suggestions that people are just saying, oh, it's really good, but they've never actually used it. So many of these are links to things that I've really used in my classroom. So Quizlet, Kami, Kahoot, Nearpod, Draw and Tell all help to make learning accessible through the use of technology. And here are two more, the Show Me app and Flipgrid, that allow all students to achieve success regardless of whatever their issue might be that could keep them from doing well and meeting the expectation. All right, so now we're coming back to our seats, and this next slide talks about we're moving into the M part of CREAM. We're making learning meaningful. So again, our job is not to take the standards and water them down. We want to keep the standards what they are and keep expectations high. But we also want students to be engaged and to enjoy what they're doing. So the part that we have to do is make sure that the learning is meaningful. So we want still higher order thinking, and we want high participation. And this actually is very similar to Cummins' model of engagement as well. Again, keeping the expectation high, but we are making students have a better chance of success because they're actively engaged in their minds on, and they are alert and thinking. All right, now it's time for small groups. So we've had some discussion. Now we're going into small groups, and teachers have an opportunity, those who are participating in this workshop, to pull cards from a deck. And depending on the card that you pull from a deck, that lets you know what activity station you will be moving to for the next 7 minutes. So clubs will go to the chemical and physical change sort, and you can see what the other stations are based on what cards you get. So within those 7 minutes, people will have a chance to explore various activities and to really sit in the shoes. These are student-centered activities. So they get to see what it's like to be a student, and what does it mean to have a coloring page? Do I feel engaged? Do I feel like my mind is actively having to work? What types of activities from a student's perspective are going to be high engagement, high participation, which is where we want to be. Now we're coming towards the end of our workshop, and this is a time to reflect. So teachers will get a chance to just share out again something that was meaningful to them from this time together, some type of takeaway, whether it was an aha moment or something that challenged what their original belief system was. It could be possibly that a teacher is already doing some things in their room and now they have a better idea. They could walk away completely challenged. Also, this is a time to share, maybe there are just some questions, something that needs to be cleared up or clarified. But after we've been engaging in lots of activities and lots of discussion, we do want to always have an opportunity to make sure that we're sharing ideas and closing everything out and coming back together with a meaningful and rich discussion. This last slide is a quote that says, teachers need to make time to understand who their students are, not who they wish they were, not who they are supposed to be, not who the district says they are, but who they are. And this is very important because sometimes we can get caught up in maybe my children aren't as in our minds, sometimes we say aren't as bright as the children across the hall, or you might have even heard in your practice where teachers say these kids don't want to learn, or they're nothing like the children that I used to teach 10 years ago. The reality is that those precious angels that you have in your room this year are who you are going to be working with. And if we can learn to see them not from the deficit mindset, but from looking at them and seeing what they can do and capitalizing on what we know they are able to do, our years will go a lot more smoothly. Our students will achieve more, and they will feel more supported and interested in what they are doing. So again, as you are thinking about equity and tolerance in the classroom, consider adding CREAM to the top of your lesson. Make your instruction culturally responsive, equitable, accessible, and meaningful. Thank you for listening.